So a little bit of an overview. So
House.
I'm pretty sure most of you are already pretty familiar with Puerto Rico because I know that OZworks is very bullish about Puerto Rico and has great members that are from here. But to give you a little bit of an overview, we are a U.S. territory. We are under U.S. federal law. Our currency is the U.S. dollar. You know, that's our official currency and the only one we have. We are a pharmaceutical and medical device powerhouse in the United States. Just to give you a little bit of an idea, we are the sixth largest exporter of pharmaceuticals in the world. At one point, we were the largest exporter of pharmaceuticals in the world. So that's pretty much the main bulk of our GDP. It is not tourism. So this accounts for around 55 to 60% of the GDP that Puerto Rico has. And another industry that's growing pretty fast on the island is the aerospace industry. So companies like Lockheed Martin, Pratt and Whitney, Honeywell, you name it, they're all here in the island. Lufthansa Technique, so the technical division of Lufthansa, the engineering firm behind Lufthansa, which obviously is a German carrier. They give services to JetBlue, American Airlines, a bunch of different airlines here in Puerto Rico in the Aguadilla airport. So it is a very growing industry, and obviously we do have the talent and workforce for both of those industries. The engineering, the School of Maya West, which is where I graduated from, it's one of the top schools graduating bilingual and Latino engineers in the United States. It's actually the school that most Latinos graduate out of the United States. So we do have a very good workforce here in Puerto Rico. So Puerto Rico tourism, why are we so bullish about Puerto Rico tourism? So one thing is the strong tourism growth that Puerto Rico has seen in the last couple of years. So one of the record year for Puerto Rico was 2019, which was right after Hurricane Maria, and 2021 is looking to be an even better year for Puerto Rico. So we're definitely on the path to have a better year, even though obviously there are some things happening right now. For example, the Delta variant of the COVID-19, which obviously that might affect a little bit the numbers. But I think overall Puerto Rico is poised and en route to be at least 6% higher than it was in 2019 in terms of how tourism is looking. Another thing about Puerto Rico, so Puerto Rico has a shortage of hotel rooms. We only have around 11,000 hotel rooms in the island, whereas islands like, for example, like the Dominican Republic have 100,000 or so. I actually have to confirm that number. It might be less, might be more. But I know that most of the islands in the Caribbean have way more rooms than we have. So we definitely have a shortage of hotel rooms in the island. We do have a domestic and international travel to the island. So a lot of our consumer base and a lot of the people that visit the island mostly come from the East Coast of the United States. So they come from New York, they come from Florida, they even come from Texas. California is another growing destination where a lot of people are visiting from. But yeah, we have a great presence with Americans here in Puerto Rico. And then in terms of international travel, we do have direct flights that go to. At this point, I think they're only flying to Spain, so to Madrid. But I know that on one occasion we were flying to Heathrow. We were flying to different airports in Europe. So there is direct access to Puerto Rico where you don't have to go to New York or something like that to get to Puerto Rico from Europe. Something that's obviously very attractive in Puerto Rico to develop is tourism tax credits and the additional incentives that the government gives. So the government is really pushing to move the Puerto Rico tourism industry forward. And that's why they came up with all these structures and incentives to kind of help that specific sector of the economy. And it just to be clear, it doesn't only apply to hotels. It applies to, for example, if you have like an ATV rental place that you want to do, a bus tour place that you want to develop, all of that can apply for the tourism tax credits. And last but not least, the one thing that really is distinctive for Puerto Rico is its vibrant and distinct culture. I think it's unlike anywhere else in the United States. So people that come here, the good thing about being in Puerto Rico is that you're in the United States, yet you're kind of outside of the United States. You'll feel a completely different vibe and a completely different culture around you. It doesn't mean that you won't be comfortable. You still have all the things that we Puerto Ricans love it too. You got all the fast foods. You got all the things that make, you know, America great. You got them in Puerto Rico, but with a little bit of extra spice. So in terms of the tax credits and incentives that we have here, we do have, again, up to 40% of the tourism tax credits, up to 90% exemption on income, 90% exemption on gains, 75% exemption on property tax. And this is granted all for 10 years. So pretty good business, the tourism sector here. Something that I want to touch base a little bit is on the electrical grid. A lot of times when you hear Puerto Rico, you hear a couple things. You hear that electricity goes out a lot. You hear that there are hurricanes. You hear earthquakes, and that's a lot of what you hear on the media. And there's a lot of good, positive things happening in Puerto Rico right now. So one of the things is the electric grid. So the electric grid at the beginning of the year got a $10.7 billion investment from FEMA funds. And pretty much as of January, they started those projects, and they'll go all the way for 10 years. So for the next 10 years, they will be pretty much refurbishing the electrical infrastructure of Puerto Rico. Another good thing that happened pretty recently is that finally Puerto Rico has a private company running the electrical grid. So the transmission and distribution grid on the island is now managed by Luma, which is actually a subsidiary of an American company. So we have a private company that's actually putting some money into repairing the electrical grid. And I think that in the future, that would account for lower rates in electricity here on the island. So some of the things that have been going on in the media. So Biden obviously has freed up a lot of billions of dollars that were kind of on hold during the Trump administration. So now that Biden came in, a lot of those millions of dollars are coming into the island, and obviously redevelopment of roads, redevelopment of the electrical grid, redevelopment of infrastructure. That is all happening because of all that money that's coming in from the federal government. So it's been definitely very positive, and again, it makes us very bullish for the future of Puerto Rico. Also, like I mentioned before, record tourism numbers for Puerto Rico. So right now, in terms of like the recovery of Puerto Rico, we're recovering at a pace much quicker than the rest of the Caribbean. I think 38% higher at this moment. And then comparing to the States, we're actually 6% or so ahead in tourism and hospitality in terms of like the bookings, 6% ahead of comparing it to 2019, whereas the States are still 15% behind. Comparing the hospitality rates. So I think overall Puerto Rico is looking very good for the future, and especially in the hospitality industry. So here's a little bit of what happened on July and June specifically. So pretty much Q1, Q2, and Q3 have been record quarters for Puerto Rico in terms of how much people are coming into the island. So in Q2, we got around 1.3 million or so people that visited the island compared to Q2 in 2019, which was around 1.15 or so. So there's definitely a big push of people, coming into the island and exploring the island, and it's showing up. Another good thing is infrastructure development, like I mentioned. So one good example is that Puerto Rico is not only focusing on, the investments are not only focusing on San Juan and the surrounding areas, but also on the rural areas. So one of our other international airports, which is the Aguadilla Airport, is going to get $135 million to redevelop a new runway. Fun fact, it is one of the longest runways in the world. B-52s used to take off there. So that used to be a military base. It's been since the 1960s or so. It's been an airport run by the municipality of Aguadilla. So again, people don't have to go straight to, if you want to visit the west coast or the south coast of Puerto Rico, you don't have to go to San Juan. You have multiple choices to kind of fly around the island.